Good day. It's George Lees from his own living room, who's just had the third sectioning threat from the local doctors. Yeah, it's really sad. Let me read the letter that I used to send this vital information on the fact that the two countries in the world still use the Piso name for their currency. That is Mexico and that is the Philippines, where the massive weather storms struck through the Philippines, just to expose to me that those are the epicenters for Christianity's fraud. Okay? And Mexico is the place where the Americans take the Piso about robbing the banks, and that's Butch Cassidy and Sundance. Yeah, my wife's biggest heroes. Yeah, it's tragic. That's about defrauding your country and actually robbing the banks as gangsters. All of these people are gangsters. That's Bill Clinton, the Queen's half-brother. That's George W. Bush, who's related intimately to the families who wrote the Christian Bible. And the timelines, can you hear the chainsaws outside? Yet they know I'm onto everything that corrupts the world, and that's why they're trying to gag me. There is the letter from NHS Borders. That's the NHS Borders that used to be run by the Queen of the Quangos, Deirdre Hutton, and the man who tried to section me and visited my home when I was talking on the telephone about my pension prospects, that are, it may be the only way that I can stay alive and feed myself. Yeah, on less than £5,000 a year, all of the medics get 40% of their six-figure salaries for prescribing by volume. And it's all over my website, and it's all over the email I sent to myself this morning. Let me read it to you so that I can shame them. Okay, so I'm revealing the Piso news about false religion, about the presidents and the people who are the kings and queens of France from Versailles. All of them are in the same bloodlines, and they all descend from people that defrauded the Christianity story and made it up. That's the Pisos, okay? That's why I'm now a public figure, and that's why they're resorting to psychiatric referrals to silence me. It's typical of how our world fails to get to democracy. So I've sent it to my colleagues in ASCEPT, the Association for Clinical and Experimental Pharmacology and Toxicology, to Professor Cliff Abraham, a colleague of mine, and to John Key, who's already confirmed receipt, because John Key is a decent man. He's in a suppressed country that is owned entirely by the royals, which I will explain in the second half of this little video. Okay, that is the third sectioning threat from Dr. Ian Fingland, Dr. Sandy Morris, and the profiteers in the Scottish NHS who make 40% of their salary from prescribing by volume. Please look at this page. That's https sites google.com sites Prof George Lees Revelations / NHS fraud, the costs to the taxpayers and the patient's referral to psychiatric services for my interests in local healthcare. There's the letter. Yeah, it's been released by a Dr. Basil Switzer, consultant psychiatrist and GP at your home. Okay? Yet Fingland, the sad bastard who trained as a policeman before he trained as a medic, came to my door the other day. He's a friend of the family. When you look at that site, you see my invitation to have him to dinner with my family, which has been broken up entirely so the profiteers can continue to steal and effectively dismember their patient base by taking that greedy and huge chunk of their salary and giving Granny the drugs she does not need, under orders from the pharma magnates that I've talked about in all of the 450 videos that we've made. It's Chris Higgins at Durham, and all of them are in it right up to the eyeballs. Okay? And in the stories that are released by the person who keeps the genealogical records that were published by others, that is David Icke. I've become ever so nervous about David Icke because my friends who are the double agents in the investigative journalist sector tell me that that man is a hopeless Freemason. But what I've looked at this morning is confirming the truths of the false Christianity that I have been trying to get out for the last 6 months, yeah, and is leading to the sectioning threat. Yeah, that's the genocidal papacy. The holy wars that kill is the biggest cause of death in world history, and they think they're really clever by ganging up and banging up the person who's in a position to create prosperity for the whole world. And there's the Cambridge academic just passing by. She lost her husband just 2 weeks ago, and all of my neighbours are immune to the risk that they're incurring. Yeah, it's just amazing. The girl who's the daughter of the journalist has had major brain surgery in the last few weeks, and all of my neighbours have been brought in to surveil me. Yeah, and it's just amazing. I'm astounded by the power of God, but none of them see it coming. Right then, so that's Dr. Ian Fingland, my former friend, who lives right next door to Councillor Hutton, and Deirdre Hutton, the head of the health board, yeah, when he was just a junior doctor, right opposite where my wife now lives, in that toxic debt pool that they have engineered to make her look like the victim rather than the accuser. Okay, here we go. Let's get on with the story and I'll show you how big this story is. So David Icke gets hit upon by Peter Eyre and Gordon Bowden. Gordon Bowden has not had the courage to talk to me for months and months and months since we made the video on my wife's business interests. Yeah, and he was ordered into silence for revealing the net worth of her companies and all of the massive shareholding and share release scams that they release. Okay, but let's get on to the hub of the global fraud. That's Princess Diana, murdered by the bastards. That's the Queen's half-brother Bill Clinton. That's George Poppy Bush, the joke about the war dead and the poppies, which now the world understands thanks to me. That's the Empire State icon, which proclaims openly that she owns ExxonMobil and all those massive oil giants. Yeah, and it's quite plain to me that David Icke is very good at relaying the truth, because what we've got in his version of British political history is a massive set of exposures, and because I understand that everybody that he declares to be a criminal in the previous regimes or to be directors at the Bank of England, they now call them courtiers, because a lot of it is run by the royals, and he's the biggest criminal and murderous person of the lot, with the exception of Henry Kissinger, whose country, thanks to his selling of it, is still in her hands as the Queen. 40 years ahead, America's taxes come to Britain, and all of the social security benefits that Field McConnell talked about on the weekend, yeah, when they had just announced that my electricity was to be shut down, yeah, and all of it is coming out no matter what they try to do. So if you fancy a referral for free to psychiatric services in the borders, and you go along there and tell them that you understand that the doctors make 40% of their salaries, and would Dr. Basil Switzer be prepared to comment on that massive scandal and crime against the patients, you might well be sectioned yourself. Yeah, it's really exhilarating when you see the acts of God that occur. Fingland's son, he is incapable of playing rugby now. Friend of my family, take them on junkets to the Super Bowl equivalent in London, and I'm accused of financial neglect. It is a sick, sick cabal. Yeah, and it will get sicker and sicker, even although they still do not see the risk of persecuting the innocents. Right then, let's take you first through the tabs. So there's, I'll open it up so you can see them all. Okay, so David Icke incredibly has put together genealogical trees, but they were actually put together by a source called the HUTTONS website. Let's open it up completely so I can tell you the whole story in brief, and then I can go for a walk knowing that that news at least will get out. Okay, so the HUTTONS website has now become a pornography event because they're ashamed of everything that David Icke has republished from it. That's the genealogical trees of the Piso family and the elites and monarchs and Roman emperors that they sire or are sired by through all of world history. Okay, and when Peter Eyre told me the story about the Bush family, they were reputed to be Germanic, which tallies with Icke's story, but their name was the Scherfs, or the Scherfs, and the links to the man Tesla, who does the electric projects, and their capacity to scare the whole world with the chemtrails things and the fact that the humans can create the weather patterns. Yeah, that makes the gods really, really angry. Yeah, because the gods create the weather patterns, the volcanoes, the seismic eruptions, and all of the massive landslides and tsunamis. Yeah, and I understand that now, which is why I am totally God-fearing. They eternally laugh at it. Yeah? Okay, so there's the NATO symbol, there's the bald-headed eagle, and all the eagle jokes that are shared by all of the countries almost that share the patron saint as St. Andrew never ever existed. And even the flags are religious jokes, as I've explained in earlier videos. So this one, so then there's the Icke version. Let's see what is on the front page of that. So Icke has been denounced by Eyre, and what you've got here is his declaration that he can take us all the way through, right up from the year 350 BC, when Alexander the Great was the world's biggest hero. Yeah, he also, like Jesus Christ, is alleged to have died at 33. Jesus Christ never lived. I don't know whether any of the characters that are described those 2,000 years back ever actually lived, but the story about the Messiah is a total fake, and Icke understands that, and he publicises it, even although it's the work of the HUTTONS website authors, and they have had all of their work deleted from the global transcript now because it's all so sensational, and they may well be in a straitjacket because of doctors like Dr. Fingland and Dr. Morris. Dr. Morris is much more innocent. He has not levelled any threats at me. Instead, he talked to me openly about the doctors getting 40% of their salaries and how that should be fixed so that the doctors can live and will live within the bounds of that Hippocratic oath that all of them make. All of them make over 6 figures, yet because they're prepared to dismember Granny and put her in the care home that the Hutton family privatised. And every county, every council around the world does the same thing. And the Queen is filthy rich, and George W. Bush is a bloody bastard. Yeah, and his dad's nickname is Poppy, because they laugh at the war dead relentlessly. Okay, so that's the Merovingian theories and the lizard theories, and David Icke colours up. David Icke may well have been taken out because he looks like a really innocent man when I've read this in retrospect. Yeah, and he's been demonised as a bit of a dick ever since he came out and began to expose these. These are the biggest secrets. So when you expose the Christianity fraud and the fact that all of the monarchy all across Europe is linked in to the folk that wrote the Christian Bible fake up, and it takes you right into all of the Freemasonic presidents in America. Yet when I made that statement or the question to Field McConnell the other day, you could not hear me speak Every one of the American presidents is a Freemason, and the royals run the Freemasons out of Kensington Palace in leafy London. Right then, so the political aspects of what Icke talks about is what I want to focus in this video, because all of them are telling truths about how the politicians and the monarchy, in league with the medias, steal from all of the innocent and poor countries all around the globe. It is a really telling commentary, and the characters in it were not spoken about by Peter Eyre and Gordon Bowden, because it's the generation before them. It's the Thatcher regimes, yeah, and all of it is really, really vicious, and it's the biggest secret. So there we have it, the fact that if you go back to the man with the bunny ears, like Hitler's friends in Operation Winnie the Pooh, you get Lagos the rabbit, and there are dozens and dozens of Hutchesons and Warrens, and the Hutchesons next door work for the Borders College that is Michael Moore's creation in Dubai. They refuse, even although they are ancient family friends with me, to sign my petitions and declare when my wife actually left, and he works for Plexus. But let's keep to the international frauds. That's Hitler's friends and all of the profiteers, that allowed Hitler to escape out of Germany with Eva Braun in the little blue dress, and he is in power when Alexander the Great is in the bloodline, okay? And I believe that is round about 350. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are Ptolemies, these are the pharaohs of Egypt, and the arsenal names and all the little trivial jokes that emerge from this are absolutely pathetic. But I'm covering that up, and I'm going to show you how the same families were the ancestors of the presidents, because it takes you right into FDR and his brother. That's Franklin D. Roosevelt, who took America to war in World War II, and he gets polio, and God understands all of their crimes, which is why they have major afflictions, which is why David Cameron's children died and Gordon Brown's did the same. Yet they are now aware that that news is out, and that is what is the biggest cause of policy reform. Because they do not have courage, they do not have integrity, they lead their countries as thieves and warmongers. But David Cameron has changed his ways, and I will be eternally grateful to him when he starts to speak to me. Okay, so you've got all those generations, but let me first show you all of the themes that I want to air. Okay, so this is the declaration by David Icke of what I've been declaring for the last 2 years, that the whole of the Piso written Bible is a fraud, and he's recognising too that Flavius Josephus was Arius Calpurnius Piso. He's the man. Okay, there we've got it. So the Delphi forums, a lot of this is derivatized from other people's work. So you've got the Angel Fire website, the Tutsi website, and the Angrifan website. All of them reveal interlocking information about how the areas are the women in the Roman court. They're the Piso family members, or they are the relatives of the emperors in the previous regime, and all of it is just a breeding chamber for power ever since Alexander the Great. And the rabbit joke has been shared by the world, and eventually it leads to the genocide in 1939 that kills 80 million people, or it may be 50 million people in World War II, 80 million in World War I. All of those statistics, they are changing because they are panicking. Okay, and so there we've got the name Piso and the links to Flavius Josephus, who's really Arius Calpurnius Piso. That's Alpha to Omega on the Paschal candle at Easter. and it's the Aryan master race, and it's the links to the Irish wolfhounds and everything that we talked about in the last few videos, even though they've been trying to shut me and gag me by external influences like our local doctors and our local psychiatrists. And the woman across the road who's had the hedge cut, it's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, she's the administrator in the surgery. Right then, so this is another page that we're going to highlight, and it's Rothschild red shield, because the Rothschild's red is the colour of the gods, and it's a joke about the hexagram that is the Rothschild's icon, and it's a red icon when they're low life in Frankfurt, working their way up the food chain and becoming the world's leading moneylenders. Yeah, and when they take over Israel, yeah, and all of that money is paid to it was not the Roosevelts, it was their successors in government in America. But the new president in 1947 was given £2 million to sell Palestine down the Swanee and to create the new nation of Israel. Okay, and those are the banknotes in Rothschild's red, and the hexagram when Israel was created was turned to blue. Okay, this is the one that makes me believe that David Icke is a much more innocent man and probably a much more truthful man than either Gordon Bowden, yeah, who will not talk about really big issues like this because he believes that they're conspiracy theories. Instead he talks about Andrea Davidson, which is just a cover for the executions of the queens and the princesses in the sectarian violence, in the succession wars, all through human history. Yeah. Okay, so this is the absolute truths that are released about the absolute fraud that government is for about 50 years, yeah, before I began to cover the fraud that covers the current regimes, but it explains all of Tony Blair's bizarre behaviours and why the world is in such a chaotic state. Okay, so there you have the declaration, all the Queen's forces and all the Queen's men. In so many ways the House of Windsor encapsulates almost every element of this story. They are a black nobility bloodline who are knowingly working to the Brotherhood agenda, and when you look behind the facade you find it is very dark indeed. The Windsors are the highest profile reptilian family on the planet. Now, I believe in the occult now. I do not believe in the reptilian stories and things like that, but when you look at their ancient nomenclature you see that it is just their historical descriptors. Do you notice that the chainsaw has kicked in for loyalty to the corrupted system? Can't see them now. Okay, this bit is still too haunting and spooky to be, for me, a huge factor. But when the Queen was crowned Elizabeth II on June the 2nd, 1953, all the regalia of the ceremony, the crowns, the sceptres, the gowns, orbs and bracelets, were taken from the Tower of London and kept overnight in the Jerusalem chamber at Westminster Abbey. And there's a statement underneath that it is effectively a pagan celebration. Okay, and what you've got is the monarchy thriving on that type of deceit. All the facts cited can be found on the British bit. So this is not David Icke's work, that's mine. That's the Rio Tinto company, Sir David Simon, his role as a director on the core of the Bank of England, company directors associated with Sandra Power and all the Power stories about 7/7 and the blowing up of the buses. Yeah, it's cover for the financial crimes. And here we've got control companies. It's too small for me to see it at this resolution. John Wilfred Stana. Everything they cite in this horrific story, you're able to find confirmation that they are on the boardrooms. What they're doing is asset stripping our country. They're creating wildlife reserves in other people's country, and it's just a genocide scene run by Prince Philip and all of the people that run the charities, including the animal conservation charities. And these are the biggest hunter-gatherers on our globe. They are ruthless killers of their own citizens. Okay? And what you've got on the British Business Registry for everything that is cited under this article by David Icke. Yeah? I don't know whether he actually wrote it or it's derivatized, but the characters in it are really, really real, and they are really, really, really sinister. Okay? So there you can see it's not big enough resolution because I've opened that up. Let's take the things down. I'm going to start on this and show you once I've summarized the rest of the video. Yeah, so this is the biblical flood joke, because in the early days of the monarchy and religious frauds, there was Sir Francis Bacon and Robert Flood. Yeah, do you get it? The biblical flood joke that they've just remade in Hollywood. Yeah, and the Garden of Eden and all of the sources and all of the information about the floods and the original chapters in the Bible written by the Jews, remember? Yeah, and they're grandmasters. So the British royal family still hold the copyright for all of that, and still hold the copyright. The Jerusalem chamber is panelled with cedar wood brought from the Lebanon, because that was the wood said to be used to build Solomon's temple. Yeah, right, way back in world history, way before Jesus was born. Can you see the magnitude of it? The tapestry in the chamber depicts the judgment of Solomon. Westminster Abbey, the Christian cathedral in inverted commas, that's David Icke's inverted commas, is in fact a pagan temple. Even the floor is made of black and white squares, like a Freemasonic temple, where the citizens and the war dead are just puppets in the game. Okay, I'm just summarising everything now. So yeah, that is the most horrific chapter in this tale, because it's got the economic crimes of Lord Kerr of Kinlochart, all of my former bosses in pharma, Sir David Sykes, all of them are listed on the boardrooms, and the Queen and the Ogilvies and the Saints MacKillops and Saint Ogilvies that get sainted because they're sad bastards in this financial cabal, and the Catholic Church and all religions are totally for profit. None of them are for integrity or for the worship of the real gods that look down on all of this in horror. Yeah, that's them up there. I don't know too much about them. Humans are not supposed to know that. And the chainsaw and the wood joke is the joke that you already understand about the Christian cross and the T-Mobile company, and all of it is sick. Okay, so and then you've got the accusation levelled by David Icke that all of the politicians and all of the monarchy are now affiliated to Judaism. Isn't that a surprise? Yeah, do you remember who the Prime Minister was when Queen Victoria was being raped in her bedroom by the moneylenders? Yeah, Disraeli. Yeah, and Jim Murphy and all of the friends of Israel from every one of the parties. Yeah, there are no surprises here for me. Yeah, the global populace are slightly slower on the uptake, but thank you Abel Danger for the magnificent response to that video I made, both to Jim Fetzer's video and to Field McConnell's. All of them are on these really big themes, and that's the only way to change it, and it is changing fast, but not quite as quick as the biblical flood joke. Right then. So the Judaism aspects, and there you've got, and you know, this is from one of his blogspot pages. It could have been posted by a customer, but you've got the absolute horrific creation or conception that everything comes from Phares Judah, and that everything is still the Judaism And that is the fear that they have, that we are going to get onto the fact that Jesus Christ is just an icon, like the Lion of Judah jokes, and all of that is about Haile Selassie less than 100 years ago. Okay, and you've got the creation of the false Jesus, and Ike knows that he's false, but he's still publishing this to show the massive Jewish influence. Okay, and there is the first generation of the Jewish family in the first chapter of the Bible, and that is Aaron, who married his sister, and that is the Barrett Cohen joke that I shared with Jim Fetzer and Field McConnell and Abel Danger on the weekend. Yeah, that is all the generations to Jesus Christ, and then all the generations to the kings and queens of Scotland and Ireland. Yeah, the Frankish kings are all through the story, and those tabs I will talk about later on in subsequent videos. I want the whole of the big news out first. Okay, so it's a complicated as always, but the same characters and the same families are at the trough since the beginning of world history, and all of their lives are committed to genocide. And there is Phil the Greek, who entered our country on the advice of Mountbatten. Yeah, and when you look at the companies that are in the Pound Windsor tab, yeah, the people that sired the Queen's children in the triumvirate, yeah, that is Lord Plunkett and the other one, yeah, they're in those massive boardrooms that David Icke reports here. Yeah, that's the reward for running the narcotics laundering for Prince Philip for 30 years, and they get to sire the Queen's babies. All of it exposed by Greg Hallett and me, with all of the images and all of the evidence of the likenesses of all of the people. And Greg Hallett was never litigated against over 12 years of insightful publication on the biggest frauds that exist in the world, because the Windsors are the monarchy. And George I, George II, George III, all of them are tied in to the Piso dynasty that wrote the Bible and faked up Jesus. So David Icke sometimes gets a little bit sleepy when he's analysing his own output, but that could well be the work of, yeah, and there you got Joseph of Arimathea, all of the Joseph jokes. Joseph is the launch of the new regime. There's the Albert and Victoria joke. That is not the parent of any of our children, and all of you now know that, which is why the doctors are trying to have me sectioned, because it impacts on their income stream. Right then, so the other one was, it's taken me ages to realise why the tsunami was directed at the Philippines. This week I sussed it. So I've highlighted this tab as the red tide. Yeah, because what you've got in all the aquatic creatures all around the world, you've got jellyfish populations, you've got fish populations, and what happens because of acts of God is you get a thing called a red tide, when God allows toxins to build up in a period of drought for the country, yeah, or a period of severe heat or extreme weather for that country, yeah, and that's called a red tide. And the toxins come from microorganisms that grow their algae, okay, and dinoflagellates, and sometimes it can really be really serious. Okay, and you've got the links. What captured my attention here more than anything else is that Michael is the Jewish angel, and that is a joke about eels. Yeah, and they're called creatures with no thoraxes. It's in the Latin nomenclature, and Ciguateri is one of the reef fish. Yeah, they're relatively small dinoflagellates, and they get eaten by the bigger fish, and eventually that toxin builds up, and it can be really lethal. You get the same with some of the jellyfish populations, and I remember spending ages picking up jellyfish with gloved hands and little spades on the beach opposite the Isle of Skye, which is the joke about the people that run the Lloyd's of London organisation and sink the ships. Yeah, and that is the MacLeods, and that is also the joke about the Lion of Judah in a biblical context, and all of it is a fraud. So these toxins, the Sigua toxins, and it looks a little bit like the cigar toxins that are the icons for the New World Order, yeah, and they still do that as a habit to proclaim that they're part of the team. And so this is what came up when I searched for the eels, and it was quite interesting to find that the Murray eel, the giant eel that lives all around the world in the deepest waters around the world, it's got in the listing several references to Pisos. So one is onto the lead, and when you find it, you discover that Mexico is still running its country on the Piso. The Piso, compared to the British pound, is worth 3 pence. Yeah, and it is as volatile as hell, yeah, because all of it is the creation of these same families. Okay, this one is actually spelt Piso, like the family. The Peso, sorry, the one in the Philippines is actually spelt Piso, and we'll see that further down. Okay, and so you've got there the creation of the Mexican currency, and do you see that as the American? And everything that you learn when you read about the history of their bank is that it is not there to fund a democracy, it's there to lend to the government. It's a massive scandal. Every one of the banks that are supposed to be funding democracy and every public sector initiative are lending to their governments at a massive rate of interest for all of world history, and that is why I want to talk to the Rothschilds. I don't want to have them executed. They're smart enough to reverse that and create civilization and become really popular. Yeah, I met one yesterday, and the joke about Wedgie Ben is that the Rothschilds of Watford are the Ben Rothschilds. Yeah, and that's when Wedgie Ben is launched, and the man that makes the movies about Star Wars is a dead ringer for the Rothschild that I met yesterday, and he's got problems with his energy bills, and he's consulted the Ombudsman. So do you see the magnitude of that? That is a titled person called Wedgwood Ben, who's in the Oxford Union, and you do not get socialists emerging from that vent, but he did. He scammed all of the North Sea oil issues, and all of his life as the leading socialist in his country is just a cover for the Ben Rothschild that is from the Watford area, where my wife lives, and Elton John grieves for the war dead in the British royal family. That's Princess Diana. Right then. But thank you, Mr. Rothschild, in Kelso Square yesterday, for showing me that if you stand up to the people that turn off your gas, certainly if you're a Rothschild or a link to them, that you will get a decent response from the British Ombudsman. Callum Kerr, my MP, has failed to contact me several times as an accident. Yeah, even although my house is surveilled, all of them know when I'm in and when I'm out. But he's on holiday, and we're within less than 4 months since the beginning of the new Parliament. Yeah, he was on holiday last week, he's on holiday this week again. Right then, so, and in Mexico, the banking story is tragic, because we've got all the capital flight issues, all of the stories, and there you see the pesos in the Philippines beginning to come into the story. Okay, Mexican peso, Philippine peso rates, yeah, and it is stunning that I did not discover that. It's a year and a bit since they had those massive storms there, and I've explained all of it to John Patterson, how all of the churches and all of the hundreds of different Christian missions that are there were flattened. But on the beach next door, where Lapu killed Magellan with a sword, yeah, everything was left intact. The gods are wondrous, and it's just amazing what they can do. And it's just amazing how bold the people are that are the evil people that now run the world and have systematically killed all of the innocents, either by making them priests so that they cannot have sex with women and carry on the decent gene, yeah, or by just having them murdered en masse, either in martyrdoms or in crusades or in religious wars or inquisitions. It's endless. Right then, what else have we got on these tabs? I'm keen to show you that the David Icke story is full of horrible secrets about why our country is fucked and why they have created the EU to dismember every country across the globe by political correctness and profiteering for themselves, yet through the chaos that emerges. Okay, so this is the history of the Bank of Mexico, and Butch and Sundance are still very much alive. That's the running of all of the central banks on the world for the world's elites. Yeah, so the Piso joke is still running. Two major reform after Waterloo, then in wartime, when capital flight in suitcases and float planes becomes an issue. Yeah, because the currencies are laundered all around the world, and now in peacetime it's the intel operatives that do that role. Basel, which is the Bank of International Settlements, is above all of that and is the great strategy place where all of it is planned, strictly neutral for profiteering reasons. Basel watches from on high, and all the government appointees are on their board in strictly neutral Switzerland. Yeah, that's every government across the globe. Every trainee central banker learns to steal from his country in Basel, Switzerland, and that's the Basel faulty joke for John Cleese. So you've got a complete detachment in the history of this bank, and it's been the Bank of Mexico only since 1945, and the earlier banks had slightly different names, and they were created only after Waterloo. Yeah, when the template was set in Britain to steal from the British people, and all of a sudden it appears in Latin America, and the currency is named after the fraudulent Bible authors. Effectively, they still just lend to the government and the treasury, but it is market driven, and if you want to become independent, yeah, like some, let's say Poland or the Republic of South Africa wanted to do, then you get deflated big time, and that's how they start World War I, and that's how they start World War II in Germany, using the corrupted Jews on the Supreme Court and all of the propaganda in the American newspapers and in the British newspapers led by Beaverbrook. Friend of Hitler, friend of Churchill, profiteers all. And if you opt to bail out all the savers and pensioners pay as for what happened in 2008, yeah, everything is pre-planned. It's a crime against the people, which is why I'm getting through all of the tabs, because they could take me out at any time, and if I get interned in a straitjacket, I will be on antipsychotic drugs and drugged up for the rest of my life. Yeah, and that will not be long. That's what they want. That's you, Dr. Fingland. That is what you represent in our society as head of the school governors at Kelso High School. Boss at the Federal Bank of the Philippines. Yeah, everything is trained in America. The bosses at the Philippines defected from the Philippines when times are troubled. They're trained in America, in the city and the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, and this one, the predecessor to Armando M. Titango, yeah, and he's covered by his family, and you'll see it lower down, but this one is a cover for the man Jesse Ventura, that proclaims that he is a freedom fighter in America and is trying to stop all of the banking frauds in America. And I was a great admirer of Jesse Ventura because he talks like me about the massive frauds that occurred in 2008. But then when you realise that it is about the power brokers and dictators that live in the South Pacific and eternally abuse their own people, yeah. And when you see the word Philippines, it's got the word pie in it twice, and that is a huge triumph for them. Right then, and Manila University and all of the religious institutions that have been created all over the South Pacific since Magellan went there with El Nino as the baby Jesus figurine, yeah. None of the Yanks understood that. The Yanks understand that they're still in British hands and that they are still the Empire State in America. And Field is a very courageous man. I was very touched by his saying that he has personality traits and flaws, and one of them is that if you're in the American forces, you will do everything you can to make sure your country is free. Thank you for that, Field. It was inspiring. I played it to the punters that surveil my house about a dozen times when I watched the video again yesterday. That's all that needs to happen. The RAF personnel, all of the soldiery, they're being abused now. They have microphones strapped to their helmets so that if anybody's accused of genocide, it's the foot soldiers. Yeah, and do you see? So that becomes the Bengo joke, and I'll explain it later down. It's the regimes that take over as the monarchy equivalent or the presidential equivalents. It's further down. I wasn't going to show you further down, but in that case, oh, here's the Aquinos. Okay, so filthy rich families trained in economics all across the world, and they've got the word Ponce in it to show you that lots of this is a Spanish or Portuguese legacy, mainly Spain in the case of the Philippines, which is why it was Magellan. And his 3 ships are named somewhere in these listings, and it's not quite as vicious as the Columbus jokes. Okay, everything for them is a fucking joke. Okay, everything. Okay, so this is the presidential presence. He's got kind of buck teeth. He's age 55, born 1960. Okay, and they were all, the whole family were exiled into America to learn how to steal, and there he is, Benigno Aquino. Coincident with him coming to power, you get the launch of this one. Isn't it funny? And he's preceded by the Aryans, yeah, which is why they still have the Piso currency in their country, and all of them are slaves to the massive financial institutions, and they think it's fucking hilarious. And when you get war, yeah, the whole of the Mindanao massacre has been taken out of world history, yeah. Mindanao is part of their territorial commitments in inverted commas, and that is where one of the world's biggest massacres occurred in World War II, with all of the world's financial power brokers in their roles as field marshals and generals. Yeah, and it is really, really sick and really, really serious. But let's go to the bottom of the tabs, and I'm going to take you back to David Icke to show you that it's not just about World War II and that we've gotten decent since then. Everything that happens in Britain is a fraud, and it then consumes the whole of Europe. Cavemen to not sure what this one is, but let's drag the slider to the top. Oh, it's very slow, this one. Cavemen to, I can't remember what this is. Let's put that down again. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's the timeline and the exposures that the Spanish are absolutely lethal, and the number of governor generals that they have out there that do not last for longer than a year, presumably because they're perpetually in turmoil with their other Christian contenders like Portugal and Britain and eventually America for the ownership of everything that was the pagans before Jesus Christ was invented by the Pisos. Yeah, it's tragic, prehistoric. Yeah, I could take you through some of that tabs, but I've just given you it in brief, and it is horrible. Yeah, I have no doubt at all now why the Philippines was chosen for that massive tsunami. I think it was 2012. Yeah, it was huge, and I have footage of it, and I posted some of that on Facebook the other day with the declaration that I've now discovered where the Piso is still used as currency in these two countries. Yeah, and the whole of the populace just swallow it. They do not realise the significance of it. It's the biggest fraud and the biggest secret that the world has ever had, and they've still got the gall to publish it openly here with the word pie in the name twice. Right then, so that's the cavemen to Mindanao. Mindanao is no longer on it. Yet, even on the History Channel, there is no transcript of what occurred there, and there are so many dead, it's incredible, and all of them die in mud and squalor. That is openly proclaimed. Okay, so you've got the prehistoric element and the cave writings, and when writing comes on the scene, it's always used to bend minds and falsify history. Okay, which is maybe why the Spaniards come out looking like the really bad guys in the English speaking historic text. Okay, and we've got martyrs for the cause and revolutionaries too. And have you heard the term to share a rizla with someone? Yeah, that's the narcotics from all of the places where the marijuana is grown. And it is just a person who is launched into life, like the person we talked about in Naples, who was a heroic looking figure, and one has no idea whether or not they're genuine revolutionaries or they're just New World Order author creations to cover up the fact that everything is run by fascists and dictators in the case of the Equinos. Okay, so there he is, Jose Rizal. You now understand the deployment of Jose in the Bible. Joseph, yeah, at Bethlehem, Joseph with the coat of many colours. It's the launch of the new scam. Okay, now that could be doing this guy down because he's an innocent looking character, yeah, and he is someone who's prepared to die for his country if the story is true. Okay, and the Rizla is the Siggy. Yeah, and it's the cause in Jedburgh Sheriff Court of most of the persecutions of the relatively innocent people, as the sheriffdom gets away with murder in the case of Moira Anderson, yeah, and all of the cover-ups for the selling of Scotland in the referendum. But let's get through all of the tabs just in case none of these secrets are out by the time they get me in the straitjacket. So I got triumphant here when I saw this, because it's the Il and the Jewish angel built into. So do you see it? Jim no thorax. Yeah, how's it going, Jim? You have no thorax. You're like a big willy. And when you watch the movies like the Godfather, yeah, the celebration of the big willy and the penis, all of it takes you back to the myths of Baal. And there you've got the pie joke, and there's the peso 35p. Yeah, that's 10, what did I say? It's £1 in Britain, and it's 3 pence. Yeah, it's just everything that happens to the innocent countries overseas is inflicted by the elite countries which run the empire. Okay? And I thought, this is going to solve both problems, but I still cannot get the links to the Mori eel. It could be the Japan joke is in that title too. And can you see the necessary elements of understanding Latin and Greek so that you can be a classical joker? Okay? And Stanley Gibbons, famous for all of the stamps. Yeah, my biggest sin that my family has committed against me was that when I left home, my stamp album, which I loved, was given to someone else. Yeah, I believe it's in somebody in Grove Hill. Yeah, but all of that was done when I was away from home without any dialogue. Yeah, anyway, that's just nostalgia. This, for the Pisos, is a huge triumph, because their name lives on in secret. It's not a secret now. Yeah, now that I understand that David Icke has been telling the truth, I'd love to get him in touch with me. Yeah, because the little bastards that are Eyre. Yeah, Eyre is the translator and publisher of the Christian Bible, and all those stories in popular culture about Jane Eyre. Yeah, and all of the Gordon Bowden covers for his bosses in Notting Hill and Lord Bowden, Sanderson of Bowden. Yeah, it's pathetic. Yeah, and he pretends to be a loyalist. Yeah, and what they're doing is just releasing false news to the people, and the false news is about intel people that steal from the world, but they do not reveal their paymasters right at the top of society's tree, even although they're prepared to denounce David Icke as a hopeless Freemason. Yeah, and it's not David Icke's work, remember. He just reposts what was posted on the Tutsi website, on the Angel Fire website, the Angry Fan websites, and all of those sites that have been taken down or have become pornography events with people with huge willies like that eel, yeah, despoiling everything, yeah, that is in the decency sector and everything that was God's rules that were given to us through the invention of writing by the humans. Right. 2015 AGM, that's intriguing even for me. Okay, so this is on the central banking, and they've got what I thought were reeds on the logo for the Philippines, but it's actually an eagle's head. Yeah, and I don't remember which way the eagle was headed, yeah, or facing, but I would be prepared to bet that it was to the right. And I thought it was the jokes about the reeds and the bulrushes in the ancient religions, but no, this is a report on how the weather impacts on agriculture in the South Pacific, and it's the El Nino report. No mention that that is the baby Jesus joke. Yeah, it's global warming, it's a massive fraud. I'm going to ask the Able Danger technicians if they can unban for me the video that was banned on the massive Bill Clinton Foundation frauds. That video has never been released to anyone other than the people that surveil my living room. It reveals how all of the profiteering in the ecological sectors is done by an ex-president who was the son of Winston Churchill and his half-brother to the Queen. All revealed by Greg Hallett, all published for 12 years before Greg Hallett was disappeared or took the bung to talk about trivial issues again. Right then. So, history of. So this is all about the Philippines, and I'm not sure what this tab is. Sun's come out. Oh, an overview of the Banco Central NG Filipinas. Okay, the BSP is the central bank of the Republic of the Philippines. It was established on 3rd July 1993. Oh, I got it wrong. I thought it was 1945, pursuant to the provisions of the 1987 Philippine Constitution and the new Central Bank Act of 1933. 1993, sorry. The BSP took over from the Central Bank of Philippines, which was established on, oh, I'm correct after all, on the 3rd of January 1949. The carve-up in the reparations for the Rothschilds. Do you get it? Yeah, and the Rothschilds, if you look at the family trees, you can see the name Roth and Child gradually beginning to infiltrate the Alexander the Great and the rabbit's ears bloodlines. Yeah, and all of a sudden we're into Windsor, and all of a sudden we're into Bush, and all of a sudden we're into Marie Antoinette in Versailles, all sired by the same ancestors, and all of it a ruthless genocide in the names of the false religions that these people created. There's the logo. I thought it was reeds. It's an eagle, and it is facing right. Right then, and they've got the biggest eagle in natural history, and that story that David Icke tells about the history of the World Wildlife Fund is the most telling denunciation of that massive fraud against the innocent countries that I've ever read, even compared to Lyndon B. LaRouche's exposures from America. Lyndon B. LaRouche ran for president in America. He did not make it. He could indeed be the right stuff. Right then, so the next tab, I'm going to get you back to the politics that were in that document on Britain, and I'm going to show you how novel and sensational that is, because everything they say, I can check it out on the business records. Creating a central bank in the Philippines, it's all really romantic. During the Commonwealth period, 1935 to 1941, yeah, so Britain's taken over from Spain. Yeah, do you see that? So there's a world war, and Britain has suddenly displaced Spain, and all those dead governor generals that were Spanish figures. And for a time America was in contention too, and that's all in the cavemen time.